simmer dating. Simmering can actually be a good thing versus like ghosting or breadcrumbing or,
Okay, different.
submarinating and all that. Thank you so much for joining us again on Second Act TV. Once again, I'm so happy to welcome back Joni Caldwell Lerner, the dating coach, motivational coach, communications expert, and the author of Stop, Look, Choose. Joni, thank you so much for being here again.
I am happy to be here.
Oh, and by the way, before I get going here, I want to tell everybody if you want to support our channel, we now have a great way of doing it. But we have a whole website now full of merchandise with the Second Act TV merchandise. Some of it has really funny slogans that really speak to our age group. So anyway, if you're
It's
looking
so
for a
cool.
way to help support us, please go there, and I would really appreciate it. Anyway, well, today one of our favorite topics, dating trends. Although just one, we're going to talk about a brand new trend that's literally, as of this recording, everybody just started writing about, is called simmer dating. And the definition, what they say here, is that it's a slow-paced approach to dating that prioritizes deeper connection versus rushing into relationships. So that's what we're going to talk about today, is simmer dating. Joni, what exactly is it?
So we're going to talk about the positive and the negative of simmer dating. And one thing that I want to be clear about is eventually you want to bring the simmer to a boil. I mean, you want to, be all in. But simmer dating can be very powerful in its own right if both parties are clear and they communicate. And we'll talk about that.
Well, it was attributed in the information I read to Gen Z, that because they're tired of the swiping, the dating apps. They're more focused on emotional safety, emotional health, and that sort of thing. So now the younger people they see the need to slow down and really focus on getting to know someone. Now, I think we've always done it that way, but how do you think that is translating into our demographic when we're just starting to get used to online?
I think it's across all generations.
Mm-hmm.
And there is also a piece where there's plenty of time and none to waste. And when we're over 50, it's like I don't have time to waste here. Let's go.
Yeah, yeah.
But it is the process of connecting with other human beings in that simmering that can be powerful.
What's interesting and confusing at the same time, and this is a confusing topic, is that simmering can actually be a good thing versus like ghosting or breadcrumbing or
Okay, different.
submarinating and all that. And I think it's important to note that difference.
So ghosting, you just stop communicating without any kind of explanation. It's very disrespectful. Breadcrumbing is leaving a few crumbs and then disappearing, and then so that it hooks the psyche in and makes them addicted to you. Actually, that's what breadcrumbing does. And submarining does the same thing. Simmering is if it is both parties are saying, let's take this slowly. Let's really get to know each other and build a foundation. And then continue to communicate along the way and ramp it up to the boil. That's healthy. But if one person's simmering and not letting the other person know they're simmering, then that's not okay. There's no communication or balance there. The other person is going to be caught off.
I think one way to look at it is the relationship that is developing. There is consistency. It's not like you said, like ghosting and breadcrumbing, that sort of thing. There is consistency in communication, but it's spaced. It's spaced, and it doesn't appear, the relationship doesn't appear to be moving anywhere, and that's where the frustration gets in. So to your point,
the frustration is when they're not both on the same page.
Right.
So it's communication with clarity. That's when simmering is effective.
Well, so understanding that, how can simmering actually help build a healthy relationship?
Well, first of all, there's a self-protection in there. If you take it slowly, you get to know the person. We've heard horror stories, people moving in too quickly, people being love bombed by narcissists or whatever it is. If you simmer, and a narcissist isn't going to want to simmer, so that gives you some information right there. If you simmer and build slowly, then you'll get to know the person. it takes 3 to 6 months to really kind of know who that person is in front of you. Somebody may be afraid of rejection, or they may be afraid of starting over, or new to dating and they don't know who they are in that process. Simmering can be a really good way to get your feet wet in dating.
I agree. And it's funny when I was reading all about this, I think that's what Paul and I did. We simmered for almost 2 years because the
Ah,
first one, we didn't rush into anything. We knew we liked each other. We consistently saw each other, but it
mhm.
was no more than like once a week or once every 2 weeks. And I think that's one of the reasons we worked out, given both of our personalities. So I can really identify with this and I can see we're doing this intentionally can absolutely work. Now, part of our the difference for our generation, we're over 50, over
Yeah,
60.
yeah.
And there's not that much more time to waste. So how do you balance patience, with getting to know somebody slowly?
You have to trust the process. You really do. The universe has always had your back. How do I know? You're sitting in front of me, right? Everybody out there, it's somehow everything's always worked out. Maybe it didn't seem like it was the way you wanted it, but then you look back and you go, oh, wow, dodged a bullet. So just trust the process. And going back to you and Paul, my guess is that the two of you were very clear about the fact that twice a week was fine for you and
Yeah.
for him. So it was a conversation. So you didn't say, let's simmer, because that that word wasn't used back then, but it was clear communication.
Clear understanding, let's put it that way. We were on the same page, which is exactly what we're talking about here. In
Yes.
order for this to work, you want to be on the same page. Do you think that simmer dating is more common for men or for women? Does it make a difference?
That's a great question. My first guess, and I don't have any information to back it up whatsoever, I would say simmer for men is probably more common. There's a confidence in being in the world for a man, just being born a man, that I think, lends itself to having more patience in this. In the simmering, it's interesting because they also talk about it as being consistency without progression. So it's
Mhm.
not going anywhere. So if you're wondering if you guys are simmering, you look at, do you have the consistency, but you're not moving toward anything? And then you can have a conversation and say, I saw this segment on Second Act TV, and there's this thing called simmering, and I think we might be doing it. What do you think?
Mhm.
That opens up a conversation.
That's a great point. That's a great point. Yeah, there's this new thing. Is that what is that what
Yeah,
we're
because
doing?
part of simmering is also not having deeper conversations.
Well, it's interesting as we talk about this, the confusion that this causes becomes more and more clear. And again, that's why I want to reemphasize that this is it's supposed to be a good dating trend. It's supposed to be something that can help as long as you don't allow it to be a breadcrumbing, or that sort of thing, or heaven forbid, ghosting.
Right. And if you have a conversation with a person and they dodge that deeper conversation, now you know you're in this simmering thing and it's
Right.
not mutual. So there's your red flag.
And you absolutely deserve to know. It's
Absolutely.
if you again, back to Joni's point, the communication is so important that you understand what each other wants, and if one of you is frustrated, address it so you don't waste your time, because yeah, time is getting more and more precious.
Yeah. And then the other thing is there's similarly, how do I know it's simmering as opposed to he's using me as a backup plan? Okay.
Right.
Well, the backup plan means that he's contacting you as a last moment thing or sporadically. There's no consistency. That's the key. Consistency is key. And again, you can ask for clarity, especially if you've been dating for a bit.
That's a really good point. In simmering, you do make a plan, so you're not a last minute thing.
Mhm.
It's further apart perhaps, and it's slower, and it doesn't evolve into something more serious quickly, but you do make a plan. That's a big difference versus being called at the last minute because you had nobody else was available.
If if it's a backup plan, you know that you're not a priority.
One other thing that's confusing about simmering, to me anyway, is if you're taking it slowly, do you date other people or do you give the current relationship that's moving slowly a chance? Because I think once, if you do date other people, I think that interrupts really what you're trying to accomplish. They don't address that here. I'm wondering
They
what you
don't,
think.
and I believe you're right. I think that it is a monogamous situation because
Mhm.
consistency would sort of lend itself toward monogamy, being
Mhm.
in one relationship. I mean, there are people who can juggle all kinds of things. You'd be surprised at what people are
Mhm.
able to do. But I'm finding in the, coaching with your people, it's very sweet. There's a almost an innocence
Mhm.
to a lot of people over 60. They can't seem to date more than one person at a time, especially women. They can't wrap their heads around that. Even if it was a conversation where they're both saying we can date other people, she can't
Mhm.
do it because that's the way her brain's wired, right? It's a certain generation.
I can
But in
absolutely
this,
attest to that. Yeah.
yeah. So in this simmering that we're talking about, I do believe is about monogamy. But again, if it's not if you've agreed to simmer, then you need to have another conversation about taking it forward a little bit because
Mhm.
simmering means kind of staying at the status quo and not going deeper. So
Mhm.
if it gets to a point where you do want to go deeper, then have that conversation. And then sometimes naturally, like one of my clients, it just happened, you know, they're a thing without ever saying
Yeah.
we're a thing. They're a thing.
We brought it up earlier, who does it more, perhaps men or women, or why that might even be important. I think you said, like women don't. I think we don't want to be hurt. We're protecting ourselves from getting hurt again by not letting it progress to that next level. And I think men, again, and I'll throw it over to our men. You mentioned that, like you can see where this would be attractive to men is because they don't lose their freedom that way.
So listen, I used to think that way in my 20s. It's like I didn't want to be in a relationship or get married because I'd lose my freedom. But
Mm-hmm.
the truth is, being in a relationship, you gain a new freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you stay in it and you keep communicating and you keep going deeper, emotional connection, there's a freedom that is profound. So, but these are all choices. If you just want to travel and do your thing and have some company now and then, that's fine too. But make sure you communicate that with whoever that is.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting. And like I said, it's getting a lot of attention online, primarily because I think it's newsworthy because it's promoted, by the younger generation. I think that's a really mature thing to recognize that, building a connection is more important than rushing it. I mean, what do you think is important to say here before we end this segment?
So, in reference to what you just said, I think the younger generations know how to be in the moment. They really know how to be here and be right now, not in the past, not in the future. They're better at it than we are. They've learned that that does not foster deep connections. And now they're shifting to the simmering piece. So for our generation, no matter what, I think it's critical to have communication, to be clear, to be kind, to be yourselves, but be upfront. Ask for what you want. Speak what's in your heart. No one's going to do it for you.
Right.
No one is going to live this life for you. You have to be your own advocate. Don't settle. Don't settle for breadcrumbs. And if you want to take the simmering pot to a boil, then make that happen too. But get to that connection first. No confusion. No confusion.
So here's another thought that I
Yeah.
think isn't really addressed here. How long do you let simmering go on? I mean, at what point really you are just stale?
Right.
Is there an answer to that? I guess it's subjective.
Totally subjective. There is no cut and dried answer, but I would say after 6 months, I would be having a conversation, especially if the conversation would look like, I think it's time to end, or let's go next level. I do think that it's possible that you may find two people who just want to simmer forever. I mean, seriously, maybe two people don't want to go emotionally deep. They don't want to get married. They don't want to cohabitate. They don't want to, they just love the simmering. So,
That's actually a great point. You could just go on simmering. And if you're not frustrated, you kind of cut out all the stuff that, well, that might hurt you, which is one reason that you would simmer. But that's not all bad. Yeah.
so the truth is, we as human beings are 8 billion people on the planet, and not everybody wants to be emotionally intimate. Not everybody wants to talk about their feelings, especially over a certain age, the silent generation and all that stuff. And that's fine. No judgment, man. Everybody has their journey. Just find someone that lines up with your journey. And it is your gut. In answer to your question, your intuition and your gut says to you, oh, maybe I should have a conversation. Then yes, you should have a conversation. Listen.
Yeah.
Listen to the whispers.
Joni, thank you. Again, if you have more questions about this, I'm looking forward to the comments because this is an interesting topic and it's actually it's pretty deep. So if you need some extra help, maybe you think you're in a similar situation, call Joni, get in touch with her. If you need some coaching, she is absolutely wonderful, and all of her information is below in the show notes. We have a Calendly link that's dedicated just for the second act audience, and I know a lot of you have already used it. So, Joni, thank you again, and I look forward to having you back soon on Second Act TV.